We also remain committed to Jamaica and their ongoing achievements despite the recent pandemic. Many countries I deal with in the region were forced to tap the international markets, but Jamaica did not. Kudos to the government's outstanding and ongoing fiscal stewardship. It's always been a great honor for me to give a few remarks on the opening night before the Prime Minister addresses the attendees of this conference. But this year, I'm going to change things up a bit. This evening, I'm going to be passing the torch to my esteemed colleague at Jefferies, David Zervos. David is currently Chief Market Strategist for Jefferies, where he's been one of our main public voices since he joined our firm in 2010. David began his career in the early 1990s as an economist at the Federal Reserve Board. From there, he was an economist at several other Wall Street firms. As a matter of fact, just prior to joining Jefferies, David was a visitor advisor to the board of the Fed governors in 2009. I know you guys tend to hear me babble and go on and on with my opening remarks, but I can promise you that David's remarks are going to be uplifting as well as all-encompassing from obviously the pandemic, hopefully the endemic, and what lies forward. And with that, I'm going to turn over to my colleague and my friend, David Zervos. Go ahead, David.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. This is my first video conference with Kingston, and it would be, if I was lucky enough to be there, my first in-person conference. So I want to thank you for taking the time, and thank Greg for organizing this. Jefferies has done an enormous amount in emerging markets in general over the last 5 to 7 years, as I've watched the firm grow and really plant a flag down in the in any case, I've watched our emerging markets business grow immensely. I've been at Jefferies for 13 years, and it is very exciting to watch how this is evolving in countries like Jamaica, where the story continues to get better and better every year, even in a world where the emerging markets most recently have been facing some headwinds, which I will discuss in my remarks on the markets. First, I do want to say that being a newcomer to this conference, there's a lot of protocols. I think hopefully Greg did all that protocol related stuff for me. I do want to make sure that I acknowledge the Prime Minister, the Honorable Andrew Holness, for allowing me to speak here and having the relationship that allows Jefferies to be involved with the JSE and gets myself and obviously Greg to get involved with the Jamaican financial markets. So without further ado, let me talk a little bit about the global outlook, and I think given the proximity to the U.S., the U.S. outlook is probably one of the more important features, but certainly not the only feature in the markets. But I would say, as an opening line, and as I alluded to in the beginning, a lot of the emerging markets do key off the dollar, they key off Federal Reserve policy, they key off the inflation dynamics, the growth dynamics that are coming from the United States. So let me give you a little bit of a background of where we are. A year ago, inflation in the United States was running at 1.1%, almost exactly a year ago. Today, it's running at over 7%. A year ago, we were missing 10 million jobs from the pre-COVID peaks of February 2020. 10 million. We had done a great job of getting some 6 million odd jobs back, but we had not gotten anywhere near where we wanted to be. And at the time, the stock market, the U.S. S&P 500 was trading around 3,700. Over the course of the last year, inflation rose by almost 600 basis points, 6%. We gained 6.5 million jobs. We got ourselves down to only missing about 3.5 million jobs. We're now at a 4%, just over 4% unemployment rate, which many would consider to be close to full employment. And our stock market last year was up nearly 30%. This year is very different from last year. The Fed last year had an agenda of trying to get those jobs back. That was its number one goal. We were missing 10 million jobs. More jobs than were lost in the global financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. One could say it was a job well done. The Fed accomplished its employment goals, and I believe should be very happy with what is going on in the employment markets. Alternatively, when we look at their inflation issues, they probably are not so happy. A 7% inflation rate and a quarter in Q2 of last year, which was running at north of 10%, is very abnormal for the US. These are inflation levels we have not seen since the early 1980s. So the Fed has an issue now. It's kind of done with the labor market. It's accomplished a lot of its goals. It has credibility to preserve. It has inflation fighting to do. And I think that's very much the message that we're going to hear from the Federal Reserve. It's going to be some bit of tough love. Maybe look back on this period of the Fed's reaction to COVID and say, maybe they overdid it a little. We don't know. Nobody knows.